Hey everyone, so today I want to talk to you about thumb shooting for beginners. So to start off, you need a horse bow. Now this could be any style horse bow. It could be a Tatar horse bow like mine, or a Turkish one, Manchu bow, Korean bow, and so forth. There's loads of others as well, but I can't name them from the top of my head. Anyway, so you need a horse bow, Asiatic horse bow, and you need arrows, obviously. You need a thumb ring. Now this thumb ring could be a leather ring, or I suggest you start off with a proper thumb ring, the metal one, because if you're gonna go higher poundage bows, then you don't have to change your thumb ring. So you can train yourself with a proper metal thumb ring from the beginning, which will be really good. And I suggest, this is not mandatory, but I suggest you get a arm guard and a glove. And this is simply for protection from a string slap and protection from arrow flight, so you don't graze your hand or you don't hurt your forearm basically. Now to start off, I'm assuming everyone knows how to string their bows. If not, so the way to tell which part of your string goes on the lower limb and which part goes on the upper limb is if you hold your string in the middle like so, you can tell one part is longer than the other one. That goes on the lower limb first. So you put the lower limb first, and then you open up, go with your left foot through it. And what you want to do is you want to put the lower limb on your shin basically. And then what you don't want is the bow twisting like so or the other way. So you want to make sure it's proper on your shin. And then the handle of the bow needs to be on your thigh. You make sure you grab the limb in the way that it doesn't twist when you bring it towards you. This is the method that I use to string my bows, but there are many more methods to string a bow, but this is how I do it anyway. So if you find another method, then by all means do it. So you make sure your bow is nice and straight and it's not twisting, and then you just bring the upper limb up towards the string, and then you put the string in its place, put it in the bridge, and then it's nice and straight. And then what you want to do is step out, and you want to hold the bow, and as you can see, the string is nice and straight on. And that's it. That's how you string your bow. So a few tips before we start shooting. So it's really important you start shooting with a low poundage bow. Now this could be a 30 poundage bow, 25 poundage bow. It all depends on what you feel comfortable pulling and holding the shot. So not just pulling the bow, because that's easy. Anyone can pull any type of bow, but it's important you can actually pull and hold your shot for at least 5 seconds. And that poundage bow will be perfect for you to start practicing your technique, start paying attention to your bow arm, paying attention to your release and all that kind of stuff. And it's very easy to do when you have a low poundage bow. If you go for a high poundage bow, then good luck holding the shot and then paying attention to all of those steps basically. So yeah, first things first, low poundage bow. Now second thing, let's talk about the thumb ring. Now I did say it's good if you start with a metal thumb ring, but some people do start with a leather one or any other type of thumb ring. The only reason I'm saying start with a metal thumb ring is because if you're gonna change your poundage from low to, let's say, high poundage bow, 70 plus poundage bows, then you're not gonna be able to shoot well with a leather thumb ring, simply because it won't be strong enough. So you're either gonna end up having pain in your thumb, or the thumb ring might break after a while. So it's important to have a goal in mind if you want to start shooting high poundage bow eventually. Unless you want to stick with low poundage bows and you don't want to go above 50 pound bow, then by all means get a thumb ring that you think it's nice and works for you. But me personally, I would suggest you get a metal thumb ring. So the way to put on your thumb ring is you hold it sideways, and then you slide it onto your thumb, and then you twist it back so the lip covers the thumb. And this is for protection of the thumb basically against the string. And it's good to have a bit of a loose thumb ring than a very tight one, so it should really slide comfortably onto your thumb and you don't want to slide it all the way down and keep it there and then twist it. You just want to bring it back up to the knuckle so that the thumb ring is nice and firm on the thumb instead of being too low or too high above the knuckle. You don't want that. So if it's too loose, you can wear a tape, which I do most of the time. I like the thumb ring to be a little bit bigger than my thumb, because that way I don't have a problem in the summer times when my thumb is swollen and I can't put the thumb ring on. So I just use a tape. So a few common mistakes that people have with thumb rings is that very quickly, after a few 3-4 shots, the thumb starts hurting. So when that happens, just take a break and wait for the thumb to heal before you start shooting again. One of the reasons why the thumb ring hurts is because it's either not the correct size that you're using and it's too tight or too loose, or you have it in the wrong place of your thumb. So every website has a different method of measuring your thumb for your thumb ring. Just bear in mind that in the beginning you might feel a little bit of pain on your thumb, and it's absolutely fine. We all went through these stages. So you just either bite through it if it's not too bad, or if it's too bad, then just stop shooting and then go back to it when you feel comfortable shooting again. But don't overdo it. You don't want to end up with a very, very bad thumb basically. So just, take it slow, and then eventually you'll start shooting and be more comfortable with your thumb ring. So next, let's talk about how to hold the bow. So what I usually do is you make a C shape like so, and you put the bow into the palm of your hand. So you want to put the bow handle around here where the little curve goes for your thumb basically. So you want to put the bow there, and then you wrap your 3 fingers around the handle like so. And this is how it should look like. Now, what most people do is they put their index, they put it against the bow like this, or in my case, I keep it loose like so. So whatever works for you, but these 3 fingers wrapping it around the handle and putting the handle here is an important part, and I think most archers do the same grip unless you're shooting a different style bow. So it depends on the style of the bow as well and the style of the handle. So one of the common mistakes that also a beginner makes is holding the bow too tight. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to hold it so tight that your fingers start hurting or your thumb start hurting. And this also doesn't allow the bow to make its natural move of, going to the side or going forward. This is what it's gonna look like if I hold the bow too tight. And I can really feel the shock of the bow as well going through my hand all the way. So it's not ideal to hold it tight. So you want to hold it tight enough so that the bow doesn't fall when you take a shot, and then loose enough so that the bow moves around a little bit in your hand. So when I pull the string of the bow, I can feel the bow pushing onto the cushion part of my palm basically. It pushes there, and then what happens when I release is my fingers, because I'm holding it tight enough so that the bow doesn't fall from my fingers, what happens is the bow naturally goes, these fingers push on here, and my palm allows the bow to go back to its natural position. So what happens is this is what should happen basically. So the cushion part of the palm is pushing the bow forward, whereas the 3 fingers, they push the bow towards you. So forward push and then back push, and this is what happens. So next part, let's talk about loading the arrow onto the bow. Now you grab the arrow, doesn't matter how you grab it, but for now, because we are beginners here, so we're just gonna grab the arrow normally at the shaft, and then since you're holding your bow in this manner here, you want to put the shaft or the arrow in between your index and thumb like so, and this way you can let go here and the arrow won't drop. It's a bit more secure to grab it like this. And then what I usually do is I grab by the nock and I push it down and I knock the arrow. So once I've knocked the arrow, I'm still holding on with it with my thumb and my index to the arrow. So I'm not letting go of the arrow, because if I do, the arrow is going to drop, and you don't want that. So again, you grab the arrow, you put it between your index and thumb, and then you push it down and you knock the arrow. So this is what you should be looking at right now. So the way to hold on to the string with the thumb ring is, when you have your palm in front of you, you close these three fingers and you're left with this shape here. So these three fingers, you keep them shut at all time. Do not open them. And it's very important you learn this from the beginning, and you don't develop the habit of holding the string like this and then releasing, so these three fingers are always in the way. So you don't want to do that. You just want to close them, keep them closed. So you want to have a fist, and then you just open the index and the thumb. So this is what you want. Now you go in like so. So this is the shape you have. You just put your wrist down like this, and then you just go in. So this is how you want to go into the string. And then the string goes on this lower side of your thumb ring, the lip of the thumb ring. So once you've put it there, you push up your thumb so it touches the knock of the arrow or the shaft, doesn't matter. So you just go up, so as long as you're touching the arrow basically. Then, since these three fingers are shut already, you wrap your index around the nail of your thumb, and then you want to push with the middle part, with the middle knuckle of your index, you want to push that against the arrow. And this holds the arrow in place and secure. So you can let go with these two fingers, and you can see the arrow is secure. No matter what I do, the arrow does not move. And it's because I'm pushing with my index onto the arrow. So don't do it too hard, just enough so that you're certain that the arrow is not going to fall off the bow basically. Now in some cases what happens is, when you want to grab onto the string with the thumb ring, your arrow comes off like that. And the reason for this is because you're pushing against this part of the knock with this part of your palm. And the way to prevent that, this is why I said you want to go around your nail and not here. See how big the gap, the little circle gap here is? If you go around the nail and not around the knuckle. And this causes the knock to come off the string if you go too far to the knock. So be mindful of that. Now, it's gonna happen regardless of, how you wrap your finger. It's gonna happen eventually 1 or 2 times, but you'll get used to it, and then you'll know exactly how to wrap it around the string without having the knock coming off. And another reason why you're holding on with your index and your thumb is that if in case this does happen, your arrow doesn't fall on the ground, you can still hold on to it here. Practice that, I would say, before you start shooting. Start practicing these steps, because it's very important you get them right from the start. Okay, so the next important part is the target, obviously, and what the distance is that you should be considering to start off with. Now, as a beginner, you don't want to go too far, because you're going to end up losing arrows, or you're going to end up, missing the target completely, and it's not going to be fun. So what you want to do is you want to practice something called torba. So you stand a bow length distance from the target. So you grab your bow at the lower limb like this, and then you put it against the target, and that's your distance. And for a beginner, it's really good to do this, because you can really focus on your technique and release and everything, instead of focusing on hitting the target from a long distance. So you don't care about hitting the target. What you care about is getting your form right and building muscle memory, and this is called torba. So it's very important you start practicing torba distance before you actually progress into longer distances. And this again ties up to the low poundage bow. So having a low poundage bow shooting from a short distance will help you get your technique right. Okay, so before we start shooting, it's very important you get your stance right as well. So when it comes to your stance, you need to stand with your feet wide enough, so it's shoulder to foot, shoulder to foot. This is how you stand. This is the width. You can stand wider. It's entirely up to you, whatever works for you. But for me, this works. So my foot is aligned to my shoulder and my left foot is aligned to my shoulder as well. So the way I stand is I'm facing forward while my target is 90 degrees on the left of me. So basically what you want to do is you want to align your bow arm shoulder towards the target. So if I was a left hand shooter and you were the target, I would align this shoulder right to you, like so, and that's how you want it. And another thing I want to talk about is your bow arm. Bow arm is very important that it's nice and straight and steady when you draw your arrow. So once you've loaded the arrow onto the bow, you want to point the arrow to the target, or your bow arm to the target. And what you don't want, this is very important because this is a very, very common mistake beginners make. You don't want your shoulder to be like this. Okay, this is very bad. This is not only very bad, this is terrible. You want to drop your shoulder, natural position, drop it like so. You don't want this, you want this. Okay, hold it, check the shoulder. If it's too high up, drop it. Exaggerate with the drop. What this does is it also engages your back muscles, especially when you're shooting higher poundage bows. You want the elbow to be high, the shoulder to be low, the bow arm shoulder to be low, the elbow of the release hand high. So high, and then you draw back. Once you draw back, your elbow comes lower and it aligns itself in the same line as the arrow. So it's gonna be one straight line like this. Okay, so you get to your anchor point, this is your straight line. You don't want this, you don't want this, you don't want that, or you don't want this. This is terrible, which most people in the beginning will do. They probably will do this. You want this up, and then you come low, align it, and your shoulder is low on this side as well. And this allows your back muscles to draw the bow instead of your arms drawing the bow or your wrist. So this is what you want. Shoulder and elbow. Shoulder low, elbow high. So you point the bow to the target. Your shoulder, if it's like this, you drop it, drop the shoulder, elbow high, you draw. See how my elbow came back low to the same line as the arrow? And then you release. You release like that. So I'm gonna shoot this way, facing my back towards you guys, so my apologies, but this way I can show you how my back muscles are engaging while I pull my bow. Stance, my feet are aligned to my shoulders, shoulder aligned to the target. I load the arrow onto the bow. I point at the target. If my shoulder is high, drop the shoulder, elbow, keep it high. Don't keep it low here, keep it high. And this allows me to engage my back muscles to take the shot. So I go high, I come back low with the elbow, and I take the shot. So elbow needs to come back low, so you can't have the elbow up there. It needs to come back low so it's nice and straight line, and then you release. And then you release. So your release is literally this. These three fingers, you keep it shut at all time. So this is your release. All you have to do is this. And make sure when you release, you don't go like that or that. You just go backwards. You go back, just as if you're elbowing someone on the right of you. So you're just doing this basically. It's very important because if you don't go back, your arrow is going to end up on the left or right of your where you're aiming at, basically, because you're doing this with the release hand. So it's very important you keep this hand as steady as possible, and then when you release, you you punch it back, basically. That's what you want to do. And the same goes for your bow arm. It's very, very important you keep it steady and you don't move too much, because a lot of the times, especially when I started, I was doing this with the bow arm. So I was throwing my shoulder forward. You don't want to do that. Like I said from the beginning, start learning good habits from the start. So as soon as you start, you want to do everything properly, because it's very hard to unlearn bad habits once you're into archery or anything, to be honest. So once you're into it, it's hard to unlearn it. So start learning good habits properly. So your stance, you gonna align your shoulder towards the target, and then you're facing in front of you. You load on the arrow to the bow, you grab the string, you point at the target, you draw back, make sure your elbow is not facing that way or backwards, and then you just release. And this arm needs to stay straight. You cannot have this movement or that movement once you release the arrow. So these are the steps that are very, very important to pay attention to when you have started your thumb ring journey, basically. And having said that, please keep in mind that these steps work for me individually. These might not work for anyone else, you know. So make sure you find what works for you. If anything that you think works for you and it's safe to do, then go for it, you know. Practice, you know, try things. One other thing I would suggest you do is you exaggerate the move, you know. So for example, if you're shooting, if you want to learn to have a clean release and you want to do this movement here, and you know, you want to learn it properly, exaggerate with it. So you get your stance right, everything, load on the arrow to the bow, point at the target, you draw back, and then you do a exaggerated move when you release, because that exaggeration allows you to understand that, okay, I'm doing this. And then eventually you slowly don't exaggerate anymore, but it's a habit. It becomes a habit, basically, that you just throw your arm back when you release instead of going to the left or the right or something like that. Once you get a grouping like this, you can move back and then increase your distance. But this is the grouping you want. And before that, before you start aiming and everything, make sure you get your release right, make sure you get your bow arm, everything, form, technique, everything needs to be correct before you start aiming, before you start shooting from longer distances. So these are my tips to you, and this is what works for me. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and you can drop me a comment if you want, or like if you want, or subscribe if you want. It's entirely up to you. But yeah, drop the comment if you have any questions and if you want to know a bit more about thumb shooting and everything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Peace.